Proposition had to prove that they win in three scenarios to win this debate. First, that you get fulfillment outside of your work. Second, that you get fulfillment inside your work, or that you get fulfillment from both. Why do they fail on all three pushes? First, because if you only find fulfillment outside of work, that means you condemn your innie to a corporate job that they're not happy with and likely suffer for in the rest of their very short existence before their outie decides to switch works and the innie just dies literally. Second, if you assume that this person has fulfillment from their vocation and from their work, maybe they're an athlete, they're a professor, they like what they're doing in their job, that means that you ultimately lock your outie out of the memories of happiness and fulfillment that you're able to get while you're happily doing your work and getting fulfilled. But lastly, in the case that you're able to get fulfillment from both outside of your work, like with your family, and the time you spend within your work, why compartmentalize and separate yourself into two personalities in the first place if it turns out you're perfectly happy if you're integrated in both your work and your life? And if they're going to argue, oh, you're distracted about certain things, you aren't able to apply yourself in the work, well, if you're happy in both ends, there's no point in compartmentalization. Using their own logic and framework, their case just is self-defeating. But even if you don't buy this case, their claims and benefits are all dependent on the idea that they're able to prevent workplace abuse and workplace discrimination. I already give you the analysis at Deputy as to why it simply doesn't work, because they tell you, okay, personalities are different from memories. I tell you otherwise. Memories build your personality, but even in the best case scenario on their end, where your personality magically changes and is no longer racist for whatever reason, you still have to address the fact that you're tampering with people's agency. When you change someone's personality, you change their capacity and access to information and the logic that they use to make decisions. You impose agency that is external to them, and you rob them of the ability to make a choice. And we already explained to you why it's incredibly harmful, because you dehumanize these individuals. And insofar as proposition isn't able to give us a direct principled push, besides weighing it off and saying, oh, the innie would probably rather die than face workplace discrimination, I think it's a very weak push coming from them. Because most people would rather preserve themselves rather than kill themselves to escape suffering. So really what you're doing is putting the innie into a position where they simply have no escape from suffering on proposition N. And so you create a situation where there is a completely separate individual with their own set of memories, that is their own individual, that is simply trapped in a hellish corporate landscape. But again, we already explained to you why even in the best case where, oh, it's a utopic society within this corporate workplace and there's no workplace discrimination, you again have to contend with the agency point. And we tell you this is the most important point in the round, because freedom and not being enslaved is probably one of the most important principles that can be forwarded in any debate ever. This is the reason why people die to fight and liberate themselves from slavery, as we've already mentioned from LO and DLO. So they really needed to prove to us why you're willing to trade that off for a utopic society. Because their best case is you trade off your freedom for utopic society. But then in their best case scenario, where you're willing to trade that off in the first place, that utopic society is once again necessary on their needs their mitigatory mechanisms. But when we explain to you, coming from Seth, from me, from Jaron, that these mitigatory mechanisms already exist in status quo, like HR officers and labor unions, and they're still not effective because corporations find ways to skirt around them using the large amounts of money they have and like just steamroll these people, and that workers are still getting abused, I don't see why it's necessarily any better on their will. And as insofar as they fail to explain to us the crucial difference besides saying, oh, your memories are altered, then I think workplace abuse is still very much likely to happen on their end. And it's in fact worse because whistleblowers have harder times accessing these corporations and accessing information as to what happens to the people inside. So in any way you see it, we win on all their clashes using their own framework and logic. It's a very clear opposition win. Thank you.